Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 2. In this module, this week, we're going to be taking a look at the Constitution of the United States. We're going to also be taking a look at dispute resolution, and there are different types of dispute resolution. While we're doing so, we're also going to start analyzing cases. So you have two cases you're going to be looking at this week. But before we get started talking about that, let's talk real quickly about constitutional law and dispute resolution. So when we talk about constitutional law, we're talking about the Constitution of the United States. Obviously, every state has its own state constitution as well. But our Constitution, as I stated in Module 1, is the supreme law of the land. And under the Supremacy Clause, that means that no states in the United States or any of our provinces can make any laws or territories that would violate our rights under the U.S. Constitution. So we also have a very important other aspect of the Constitution, which is our Commerce Clause. And the Commerce Clause basically says that the federal government has the power to regulate commerce that substantially affects interstate commerce. So what that means is, even if it is commerce that appears to only be involved interstate within one state, if it has any effect, a substantial effect on interstate commerce, the United States government can come in and can regulate that and issue any regulations or laws regarding it, or could even sue the state and say the state is violating the U.S. Constitution Commerce Clause, and therefore that particular law or regulation has to be changed or removed. Now, we also have different aspects of our Constitution. We have the Establishment Clause, we have a Free Exercise Clause, we have the Due Process Clause, and then we have also two additional aspects which concern, under the Due Process Clause, procedural due process and substantive due process. When we talk about procedural due process, we're talking about the fairness of the procedure. You know, we often say that a criminal in a criminal case has the right to face his or her accusers, and that's correct, they do. So that's a procedural due process clause. They have a right to a speedy trial in criminal cases, things of that nature. That means that the procedure is in place to make sure that it's fair and appropriate. Substantive due process is the content of the process. So in other words, if you're taking one's property, what is the reason why you're taking one's property? If you're implementing a law or regulation that is going to substantially affect somebody's right, is there a significant police power or reason for doing so because you're interfering with somebody's right? If you're going to do that, then you're going to have to demonstrate that the reason for the taking coincides with our constitutional rights and does not violate them. So then we go on and we take a look at other areas of our Constitution, which concern the amendments to the Constitution and our Bill of Rights. So when you look at the amendments to the Constitution, you're going to be looking at particular amendments. We're going to be looking at freedom of speech. We're going to be looking at our right to keep and bear arms, unreasonable searches and seizures, no self-incrimination, which is also the Due Process Clause, things of that nature. You'll look at the types of speech that are involved. You'll look at what is protected speech and what's not protected speech. Defamation is not protected speech. You'll also delve into privacy rights a little bit in this module as well. But moving on, you're going to be looking at what we call alternative dispute resolution, or just dispute resolution in general. There are different forms of dispute resolution. There's negotiation, mediation, arbitration. They're all different, so you definitely want to pay attention to the differences between them. Then you're going to talk about jurisdiction. Jurisdiction is a very, very important aspect of procedural law. And what jurisdiction does is it says to the court, I have the authority to hear this particular case because the subject matter falls within my purview, and I have the authority over the individuals involved in the case, in particular the defendant involved in the case. And so there are different types, and when we talk about both of those things, we're talking about in personam jurisdiction and subject matter jurisdiction. So subject matter jurisdiction concerns jurisdiction over the entire subject of the case. What's the case about? Is it a negligence case? Is it a family law case? Is it a criminal case? That's what we're talking about when we talk about subject matter jurisdiction. When we talk about in personam, we're talking about jurisdiction over the parties. Is the party a resident of the state of Florida if the lawsuit is filed in Florida? Is the plaintiff within the jurisdiction of the court? Those things when we talk about personal jurisdiction. In rem jurisdiction has to do with property issues, immovable property, real estate, things of that nature. So if a court is ruling on from an in rem standpoint on property, that property has to be located in the state or the jurisdiction of the court in order for the court to actually rule and hear the case. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about different types of jurisdiction. So go through those slides, make sure you're aware of it and you understand it, because jurisdiction in cyberspace is very different than jurisdiction in a brick and mortar situation. So there are different ways of determining jurisdiction in cyberspace. So be aware of those things. And let's take a look quickly at the homework for this week. The homework for this week involves the Module 2 discussion. You're going to read and analyze the case that's provided there, which is C&L Enterprises versus Citizens Bank. And you're also going to analyze Gonzalez versus Raich. And the Gonzalez versus Raich case is a medical marijuana case and concerns the right, whether the government basically has a right to take that medical marijuana that they did in that particular case. So pay attention to those facts, take a look at the case, and then you're also going to complete quiz 2. So a lot of things to do on your radar this week. Make sure that you allot your time accordingly so you don't fall behind and you're able to get everything done. If you have questions, as always, please don't hesitate to contact your instructor. Have a great Module 2 week, and I will see you next.